All right. I believe we have our, checking that now. Should be streaming live on Facebook. All right, well, let's get started. Welcome everyone to Scrum Masters of the Universe. We're quite pleased today with a great crowd for joining us for Chris Stone with the awesome retrospective guy. If you've been following him on LinkedIn, he has a website as well. You'll see some of the great work he's done in Miro for truly making engaging retrospectives. So he's been in the business about 8 years now, fostering an environment for high performing teams and organizations through agility. He's worked across a wide range of industries and even some of the largest organizations in the world. He coins himself the Virtual Agile coach. He really wants to enable frictionless innovation regardless of the location. So he's really focused on the remote aspect and a firm believer in enabling agility while working virtually. Through this platform, he shares his advice, guidance, coaching, mentoring, and training, along with a series of actionable experience for you to try, which you'll find today. And if I remember right, you have a podcast maybe coming up that you're looking to name. So
I do indeed, yes. I'm creating a podcast alongside Malud Cicerelli she's the creator of the Remote Forever Summit, a conference that's all about remote working. So between she and I, we're going to be creating this podcast. We're currently in the naming phase of it, but yeah, looking forward to getting that out there.
Yes, and okay, and I'm going to, again, I'm going to post a few links as well. I'm going to read, oh, it looks like Chris already posted his Miro link. So Chris, I'm going to let you get started. And while he's doing that, I'm going to add a little bit more information about Scrum Masters of the Universe. I'll post some links into the message box, but welcome everyone. I'm glad you're here.
Perfect. Right. So thank you very much for having me. First and foremost, it's great to be here today. To quite a large audience. And this session is all about remote retrospectives. So how to make retrospectives conducted virtually a little bit more engaging. Now, anyone who's seen any of the things I've been putting out there, I'm a big fan of creating these themed retrospectives, doing them in immersive ways. You know, whether that's a Queen rock band theme retrospective, Friends, the TV show, Daft Punk recently. Unfortunately, I released that retrospective the week before they formally split up. So I don't know if that was a bad omen. Video game themed ones, there's all sorts. And there's a good reason I do it is one, it's to keep things fresh, but we'll come to that in a moment. I'll be using Miro primarily as the visual side of things, and I do encourage participation as much as possible in any of these sessions. So I want people to feel like they're interacting. So you can do so via Miro. The link is in the chat for anyone who hasn't seen it yet. I'm just going to bring everyone's attention to where I am on the Miro board, and it just covers an agenda for today. So first of all, the why. Why do engaging remote retrospectives? Why put in that creativity? To quote Simon Sinek, start with why. We're going to do a little bit about you guys, find out a little bit more about you. We're then going to choose a theme, and then we're going to create a new retrospective, an entirely new one that no one's ever done before together as a community. And then I will leave you guys with ideally some actionable takeaways, things that you can try to leverage some of the kind of tools and tips and strategies and flim-flams that I've come up with and practiced over my years of experience with coaching remote teams. What I'm going to bring your attention to also, and this will be part of the actionable takeaways at the end, you can probably see here a little snapshot of just some of the retrospective templates that I've created. There's far more available on my website, and there'll be links to those later. They're all entirely free. You can download them for Miro or Mural, depending on what tool your company allows you to use. And so it should very much be as easy as plug and play, give it a go. So why make creative retrospectives? First and foremost, to keep things fresh. Now, I'd love you guys just to perhaps comment in the chat here. How many of you have been in a retrospective or even a meeting where it's got into a stale situation where it may be a retrospective, for example, what went well last time, what didn't go well, what are we going to do next time? How many of you have experienced a retrospective like that, where it's the same theme every single time? Yeah, I'm seeing some +1s, some yeps. Several, in fact. Now, the problem with doing that is it can make it become boring. People can disengage. And odds are what may happen is you'll be talking about the same topics in the retrospective in a few weeks' time anyway. It can also be stale in that it will, sorry if there's any background noise there. It can also be stale in that it maybe doesn't provoke thinking in different ways. So another reason I create retrospectives in themed ways is to celebrate microcultures. And we'll come to that in a moment through an exercise we're going to do. To promote engagement and to promote different thinking, as I mentioned, just the simple act of asking a question in a slightly different way can produce great results. And I'll give you an example. If you are in a daily stand-up and a team are answering the question, what blockers do I have, or what impediments do I have? And a lot of time they just go, no blockers, no blockers, no blockers. But by rephrasing that slightly and saying, hey, what support do I need? That might result in them answering that question more frequently than what blockers they'll have, because they may be perceiving that it's not something stopping my progress entirely, but if I could probably do a little help with that, I might get there quicker. So just altering a question sometimes can cause great results. And lastly, and I'm a firm believer in this, work can be fun if you allow it to be. If you put a little creativity in, work can be fun. And what I'm going to do is, again, scroll you down a little bit. I'm going to share just a snapshot, just a snippet of some of the responses I've had from some of the creative retros I've created. So you can see lots of things here. People saying, thanks for sharing this. I did the Diwali theme retrospective. It was really, really well received. The team appreciated the creativity. People saying they used the Home Alone one I released at Christmas. People saying the James Bond retro just after Sean Connery passed away. There was lots of different retrospective themes that people have liked. Now, there's a big red box around one of these, and I'm highlighting this for a reason. They might not be for everyone, and it's worth acknowledging that. Some people don't wish to engage in creative retrospective themes, and sometimes you will have detractors. Now, one of the tips I have for later on is allowing the team to choose their retrospective. And by having their choice, that's one of the ways I find can help navigate past some people who may be a bit reticent to do a different theme. Sometimes people do just want to focus on getting the work done, and someone who's perceived to be trying to force fun, they might not respond to that. But I've also had lots of stories of people saying, hey, we did this retrospective for the Queen theme retrospective with this hard-faced program manager who never smiles, and for the first time in this meeting he smiled, he connected with the content matter, and he shared that he loved Queen the rock band, so it brought him out of his shell a little bit. Now, what I'm going to do is ask you guys a couple of questions before we start with creating our own retrospective. And the way I'd like you to engage here is using the Miro boards. You should be able to see 3 questions here. To interact, if you've not used Miro before, to interact with any of these post-it notes, just make sure that you've got the blue cursor on the left-hand nav panel selected, or you can press V on your keyboard. And then if you double-click any post-it note on the screen, you can interact with it, you can type a message. If you prefer to do so, feel free to speak out loud or type in the chat. The questions are, what's your favorite retro theme? So I imagine, given that you guys are here, you're interested in retro themes, you're interested in doing engaging retros, you may have tried different themes than the usual. So I'd love to hear about some of those. Another question is, what interesting team names have people had? I've heard of all sorts, Game of Thrones, Marvel and everything, but I'd love to hear about some team names. And lastly, what do you geek out over? So feel free to interact the boards. I'll give it a couple of minutes for people to share their thoughts here. And again, if you prefer to speak out loud, do so, come off mute. If you prefer to type in the chat, you can do, or you can do so on the board, sorry. All right, so some people saying movie and TV shows. The Star Wars one went down well. The classic 4 Ls, the 3 Little Pigs a couple of times. James Bond
Marvel once.
Sorry?
We did we did Marvel Avengers once.
Nice.
Endgame.
Was that My Infinity War one, or was that someone else's created?
No, it was not so perfect, but we did kind of, when the movie was out, we were so thrilled. So we kind of did it. And we even had an example of how each Infinity Stone is one item of the product backlog, and we took it through.
Sure. Sounds good. Let's have a look at what the chat's saying. So team name Tropic Thunder. I've watched that movie recently. Hilarious. Starfish Retro. Zombie Retrospective. Haven't done that one yet. Couple of names for team names. Minecraft. Star Wars and Harry Potter retros were a total hit. Tom Cruise is definitely the best thing in Tropic Thunder. Makes me laugh every time. All right, and what do you geek out over? So people said the Beatles, nature, Disney, the outdoors, home renovations, coffee. Lots of interesting team names coming up. Roadrunners, Jaguars, the Velocity Raptors. Nice. Waterfall 404, Guardians of the Web. Geeking out over Agile. Love it. So the reason I do this, one is to get you guys interacting. Two is it's to demonstrate that we all have our own preferences with lots of things. We like different themes. People geek out over different things, and that's because we all are all culturally different. And what I find is no two teams are the same. They're each comprised of various different individuals with their own things they geek out over, and therefore each team has its own microculture. And actually, we should celebrate that. And part of the reason I do these theme retrospectives is to celebrate the fact that people like different things. And this is why I tend to empower teams to choose their own retrospectives, to be part of it, to even create one with me. Now, what I'm going to bring everyone's attention to is I've created a playground, a virtual playground for you guys to build your own retrospectives today. We're not going to do it as part of the session, but I invite you to, if you wish, you can choose. Essentially here, you'll see I've shared 8 of my existing themed retrospectives. They're all musical. So we've got a Taylor Swift one, a Prodigy one, a Daft Punk one, a Beatles one, Elvis, Queen, Guns N' Roses, and Christmas hits. And what you can essentially do is there's lots of templates along the bottom. They're blank. You can drag any of these existing questions and any of these pictures down and create your own template and use that with your team if you wish. So this is part of something I'm going to be doing more of going forward, is creating these kind of mix and match retro builder templates so you can create your own retros with your teams very, very simply, rather than just downloading an existing single one. You can do that, but also you can create a mix match depending on your team's needs. I invite you to have a play at your leisure and do that. Right, let's move into, before we start, does anyone have any questions before we decide to choose a theme and create a retro as a community together? And again, I'm just going to have a look at the chat. Cool, no questions. Right, so I'm going to bring everyone's attention to this section of the board. Choose your theme. Now, what this is all about is I'd love to hear from you guys what themes you might want to create as a retro. So what I'd like you to do is input on these Post-it notes any theme you like. My retros, by the way, I aspire to make them around about 45 minutes to an hour. The reason for that is I like the short, sharp nature of it. I like to provoke a little bit more a little less conversation, a little more action. And again, I'll talk you through some of my tips for that a bit later on. In terms of what we're doing right now, I'd like you guys to, on these Post-it notes, share what retrospective you'd love to create. And then we're going to dot vote. We're going to allow you guys to prioritize the one you want to do most. And then together, we're going to create a brand new one. And I'll show you how easy it is to do so. For those of you that are seeing ones you already like, you can see these little emoji icons. They look like a cluster of stars. You can grab those and place them against the Post-its that you most like the look of so far. Now, what I am going to do is mention that Lord of the Rings, I already have done one, but we can create a brand new one together. Star Trek, I've already done. Game of Thrones, I've already done. I definitely haven't done Shrek. I haven't done Cluedo. I haven't done just general animals or candy bars or Easter. Time travel, interesting. Premier League, that might not work for everyone since we've got quite a global group here. I can tell who the Iditarod one's from because she specifically requested it of me recently. That'll be Jamie.
It's happening now. It's the best race in America.
All right, so we've got, the votes are coming in. We've got a cluster for Marvel, cluster for Lord of the Rings, lots on travel. Keep those votes coming in. So at the moment, all Breaking Bad scoring quite highly, several for there, several for travel. Might be a toss up between those two. Or Marvel sneaking in there. Oh, it's going to be between Breaking Bad and travel, isn't it?
Wow, we have to do like, how do you do a work appropriate Breaking Bad? I don't know.
It's difficult. I mean, I managed. It takes a bit of creativity, and this is where, you know, neurodiversity helps. A group of you together, I'm sure, can help. I think the winner is going to be travel by the looks of it, and I would suggest that's probably the one that's most inclusive of the audience, given that some people haven't seen Breaking Bad, and we can all relate to travel, I'm sure, or our desire to travel. All right. So what I'm going to do, that's the vote. We are going to do travel. So I'm going to bring everyone's attention to here. This is a completed, I ran this workshop previously. This is a completed community-created retrospective based on fairy tales. Now, it's really as simple as starting with the questions. I tend to go for anything between 4 and 6 questions that prompt people to think of different things. Now, often, you know, there are topics that you want to try and cover. Things like, you know, what didn't go well, what went great, or what do we want to celebrate? Where do we see ourselves in the future with a bit of future spection? What I'm going to do is just begin deleting some of these old ones. And this is where I'd like you guys to begin interacting with the board and sharing what your thoughts are for what kind of questions we could ask that are travel related to make a travel themed retrospective. So on these green post-it notes, maybe begin sharing your thoughts as to what sort of questions that we could ask that would prompt a team to think about retrospective questions, or to think differently, to think in the context of their recent sprints or iterations, their future iterations, things that may have gone well, things that haven't gone well, kudos they may want to give. And of course, if we need some inspiration, you can navigate your way back down to where I shared those 8 musical themed retrospectives to see the types of questions that tend to be asked. So someone's put an image of customs. What could customs represent? Is this things that stop us progressing?
Yeah, this is my customs. This is something that is blocking us. I'm just trying to find out where to put it.
All right, so we got, just put that there. So what impedes our progress? Oh, passport. What could the passport be?
I think it might be the opposite completely.
What frees us up? What permits us to do something? What
moves us forward? Something like that.
Moves us forward, yeah.
But I know I did not edit passport.
That's okay. What we're going to do is we'll just keep putting down ideas, and then we can say how we can start to converge and decide. So I'm seeing things like TripAdvisor reviews. So a TripAdvisor review is obviously something that typically people go to check and verify that they're happy with a destination or an activity. So could this be some sort of future spection type thing, or is it a what would a TripAdvisor review say about our last sprint? Why don't we go with that one? So TripAdvisor. What would a TripAdvisor review say about our last sprint, last iteration? So travel bucket list. See a big image there. So that could represent things that we aspire to do as a team, or where we want to go as a team. Could be linked to the vision for the product, the vision for the team. What else have we got? So again, feel free to start sharing. Yeah, we've got someone put a big coronavirus thing in there. The middle aisle, what makes us uncomfortable? Interesting. Turbulence and hiccups when we're flying. What hiccups have we encountered? So yeah, turbulence. Where did we experience turbulence as a team? What made us uncomfortable? Modes of transportation. What will get us there faster? Cool. Were we on a jalopy or a jet? Nice. Poisonous apple. That's from the previous one. Oh, a tour guide. Yeah, very good. So looking at things now, we've got modes of transport. What will get us there faster? What's our pathway to progress? We've got coronavirus. What's going to harm us? What's going to get in our way of success? Turbulence. Where did we experience turbulence as a team? TripAdvisor. What would our TripAdvisor review say about our last iteration? Travel bucket list. Where do we want to go as a team? What I'm trying to emphasize here is that there's lots of things that you could do, and we've only spent maybe 10 minutes doing this, and there's lots of questions that have come out already that will provoke teams to think in slightly different ways beyond just the what should we start doing, stop doing, you know, what did we do last time, what are we going to do next time. It's very easy with a little bit of creativity, a little bit of thinking, a little bit of diverse thinking, to come up with a series of questions and ultimately customize a retrospective. So by the looks of it, we've already got between 6 and 8 things, and we don't need to necessarily finalize all of these today. It could be that some of them are more preferential to you and your teams. It could be that we've got 10 plus questions. What I tend to do with these templates, in fact, and one of the reasons I recommend about 45 minutes for these, is because I don't expect every single question to be answered in the retro. To me, it's just whatever questions the team wants to answer at that time. And I like to focus on doing one section at a time, and then I allow the team to dot vote the most important one, and from that focus on pulling a single action out of each section, ideally, or maybe 1 or 2 actions. As long as the team comes out of a retrospective with between 3 and 5 things to try next, that's great. I think if they identify too many, then they may be taking on too many things. And what have we got now? Someone's added a bit of a visual for turbulence. Cool. So yeah, we've got tour guide, we've got all sorts. So there we go. Basically, within 15 minutes, with a relatively large group of people, we have created a brand new retrospective based on the theme of travel. Now, I imagine that will resonate with a lot of people right now. Probably lots of people really keen to travel, and even if it's a little bit of wishful thinking about travel for some, because other parts of the world are locked down more than others, I imagine a little escape from reality is never a bad thing. If we think about the fact that people enjoy reading books, watching movies and things like that, these are escapes, and a little bit of escapism is never too bad. How would you set the stage keeping the travel topic? What ideas come to mind? So what I'm a big fan of doing when I do retrospectives, particularly themed ones, is I try and set the scene a couple of days before the retrospective happens. So if I was doing the hero's journey retrospective, for example, I might, in the invite or in an email beforehand, say, fellow adventurers, today or on this day, we're going to be exploring the hero's journey. I would basically do just that. I'd say, fellow adventurers, or as a group, we're going to explore this journey. Together, we're going to be thinking about travel and using the context of travel as a metaphor to explore how we as a team are doing and how importantly we feel we're doing as a team. And yes, I do tend to, all of my retrospective templates are free and available on Miro and Mural. Some of the older ones may only be in Miro because that's where I began, and I only got a consultant account for Mural a little bit afterwards, and I've begun the conversion process, but I'll catch up to the rest of them eventually. Right, so we've created very quickly a travel themed retro, and we've done so speedier than I have done with any of the other events. And I always it's difficult to know how long this particular part of the session will take, given it depends on the size of the audience, how psychologically safe people feel to interact. You guys have been very good with that so far. So as I said, we can basically turn this into a retro template and share it. What I want to talk through with you guys now is some actionable takeaways. I'm going to bring everyone's attention to here. And what we can do is just have a bit of a longer time towards the end of the session for just free Q&A to discuss and share people's thoughts and opinions on how they make engaging retrospectives. So I kind of alluded to this a moment ago. My retros are usually 45 minutes to an hour. Now, I know some guidance says it should be an hour per week of the sprint, for example. I tend to try and keep them short and sharp. And the reason for that is, one, it helps people remain engaged. Two, I'm a big believer in the Elvis quote there, a little less conversation, a lot more action. It's all well and good talking about things, but if we're not taking action, then there's not much value in retrospective, in doing retrospectives. I'm a firm believer in empowering the team to choose the format. It's why all of the templates I create have a section built into it where people can suggest, hey, we want to try this one next, or hey, we have this idea, let's create one together. And by creating the retros with your team, I find people are more likely to be engaged as a result. I did one not too long ago. I did a Daft Punk theme one. I said, hey guys, what do you want to do next? And I shared some examples of ones I'd previously created. And they said, hey, we really want a Prodigy one. So I created a Prodigy themed one. Obviously, some of the discography for the Prodigy bands isn't quite work audience appropriate. So you have to be a little bit creative in the same way we would have had to be if we did the Breaking Bad one today. But the team, I find, because you've created something personal to them, they are far more engaged and they enjoy the experience. Building on this, I don't think you have to focus on engagement just in your retrospectives. I've got a couple of images here. You can see there's a tiny little Ant-Man and there's a huge Hulk. And the reason for that is you can, as a team, you can almost have your own language. If the team love Marvel, and some people mentioned Marvel earlier, right? If they love Marvel and you are doing story point estimates, it doesn't have to be a 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. Your 1 could be an Ant-Man, your 8 could be a Hulk, and so on. Your 13 could be a Thanos. You can scale it based on the language the team likes to use, and you can be inventive with it. And as you'll have seen from some of the feedback I've had from doing these retrospectives, and from, I know some of you guys have used these retrospectives as well, a little creativity goes a long way. People like them, they want more of them. There's hundreds of people who responded to this meeting today. That suggests there's a desire to do so. And all of the feedback I have is primarily very, very positive. People want to be involved in these retrospectives. People want ideas for doing them in different ways. And obviously right now we are mid-pandemic and all our meetings primarily are virtual, and it can just become meeting. A little bit of creativity can help bring people out and keep them engaged and focused and enjoying things. In terms of available resources, I know that Jamie has been kindly sharing various links. So if you want to follow me on LinkedIn or YouTube, I share lots of content about all things agility, virtual working. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or YouTube. The links are both in here. I'm also a believer in agile games. I lead a regular meetup called the Agile Arcade, and in it, people join and they are empowered to choose the games they want to play most. Just like if we were walking into an arcade together and spending our coins on games to play, you are empowered to do that. And again, for me, I'm a big believer in the quote that if you want to teach people something, involve them in that and they'll learn. So this is why I use agile games, and particularly virtual agile games, to introduce concepts, because people tend to enjoy it, they feel involved, and they tend to learn more as a result. And of course, if you want to, I know Jamie has shared some of the links, but there is a link here for my website. That's where you can stay up to date with all of the retro templates that I create. I'm currently on a mission to release 52 new retrospective templates this year, so one for each week. And I think so far this year, I've shared a Daft Punk one, a Prodigy one. I did an International Women's Day one yesterday. I've done Mario Kart. I did a Back to the Future perspective. There's all sorts. So if you want to stay abreast of the latest templates I share, and again, they are all free. You can essentially just grab them, plug them and play them into your own Miro instance or Miro instance if you have a paid account. Does, I find, make it a little bit easier if you don't have much time before a retro, just to grab one and chuck it onto your own system. So we have finished with 25 minutes remaining. As I said, we were very, very quick on the creating a retrospective together side of things. I would love to use this remaining time with you, if you'd like to stay on, to either allow you to build your own retrospectives. As I said, there is a huge section, and I'm just going to bring everyone's attention to it once more. There's a huge section here where you can just populate your own templates and have a play. But otherwise, I will open it to the floor for general Q&A. If anyone wants to ask any questions about running retrospectives remotely, virtually, or otherwise. And you can do so by asking questions in the chats or just speaking out loud, either or.
I just have one question.
Sure.
What inspired you to create these themed retrospectives? It's kind of fresh and it helps us a lot. So I'm just curious to pick your brain a little bit.
What inspired me? Well, it was very much that I'd been involved in these retrospectives before, and I had noticed that people were less engaged if it was the same format over and over. And I remember searching for new templates, and I could see things like the hero's journey, and I could see there was an Elvis one that existed, and there was a couple of them, but there wasn't enough for my liking. Now, as someone who loves creative ways of doing things and who likes to keep meetings fun and fresh, I thought, right, if there's not a lot already out there, I'll start creating them. And it also ties into very much the fact that I enjoy doing it. I love spending a bit of time metaphorically applying retrospective themes into a fun template. And I love the feedback from the community as well. So it was basically that the reason I started doing them is I saw something was missing from my perspective. I saw an opportunity to do so, and I wanted to do it. And lastly, because it embraces my inner geek, I get to mess around with various themes like Star Trek and Star Wars and things like that and create retrospectives. So it's an opportunity for me to play myself.
Thank you for doing that.
No problem.
How do you get over? I mean, my team, I think, view retrospectives as a bit of a waste of time, and they even complain. And I sort of tried to ask the questions in a different way, and then one of them put, "What don't I like?" And it's when the headings change. So
okay,
it's kind of instilling a bit of enthusiasm there.
Sure. So one of the things I like to always refer back to when someone is reluctant to do retrospectives and they may view them as a waste of time is I would ask them, are you happy with how things currently are? Are things perfect, right? And often they'll say, well, no, I'm not happy about this. I'm not happy about this. And say, okay, well, if you aren't willing to communicate and discuss what we could try differently, odds are you're going to be complaining about the same things in a few weeks' time or in a few months' time anyway. So I like to refer to the fact that taking no action at all is in itself a decision. You are deciding not to act, and therefore you're accepting that your current situation is okay. So I love that quote, taking no action is a decision. And I also often refer to one of my favorite quotes as well, Einstein's definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So if they're going to keep acting the same way and expect different results, that's insane. But this is why all of my retrospectives build in 3 to 5 experiments, things to try next, things to try, learn from, iterate accordingly. Coming back to, I guess, enthusiasm about retrospectives, I can appreciate that sometimes, Agile has been done in lots of different ways by lots of different companies, and everyone's had a different experience with it. And someone may have been turned off by a bad experience with Agile and a bad retrospective, and they may get the perception that, oh, nothing changes anyway, or it doesn't matter and it's a waste of time because nothing changes. So I guess for me, trying a new style, trying something different is a positive. And then importantly, focusing on actions so that we do get change. And once people start to see change, they start to see more value in doing the activity.
Thank you.
So Marge is asking, besides the template, do you do something different in practice, you know, or applying them besides just the template?
So the templates are prompts to me. They are prompts of potential questions you may ask. Now, depending on the theme, yes, I tend to, especially some of my newer templates, I tend to build in icebreakers built around that theme. So for example, I released a Pokemon themed retrospective last week, and there was an icebreaker question, which was which Pokemon would you have chosen if you had a starter Pokemon, and that references back to the original game. So there's a way you can introduce the topic via an icebreaker. So if we were doing the travel one and I was introducing the travel retrospective today, it would be, you know, share an image of where you'd most like to go in the world today. And that might be the icebreaker, and it gets people thinking about the topic of travel. From there, when I'm doing retrospectives, I'm a believer in trying to enable everyone to have a voice. And obviously you will spot people that are more dominant over others. And the way I try to navigate past that is the first, I will ask the question. And if it was the travel theme one, let's go back to what the question was. Let's pick one at random. I will ask the question, and it will be, TripAdvisor, what would a TripAdvisor review say about our last iteration? I'd introduce it. And then the first kind of 3 to 5 minutes, I would allow people to interact with a virtual whiteboard in silence. What that does is that allows the quieter voices to get their things down without the conversation being directed towards perhaps a dominant voice's thoughts and thought process. Then after that 3 to 5 minutes, then it's open discussion about those topics. And then I tend to allow a bit of a dot vote. And what I'll tend to do is visually, I will, using Miro, I will just snip some of these section images. So you can see the TripAdvisor one there. I will basically just snip it and create little mini ones of that so that people can dot vote, just like I did with the stars and the emojis. Then they can dot vote on the most important topic and then pull an action out from it. And then obviously if there are voices which you are hearing are dominant, that's when I would say, hey, you know, great to hear from you. Thank you for sharing. We haven't heard from this person yet. What are your thoughts?
So Chris, could you tell us a little bit more about the Heroes and Journey Retro?
The Heroes and Journey Retro?
Yeah.
The Heroes Journey Retro is one that's on my website, and it's not a retro theme that I've created myself. I just created a Miro template version of it. I first heard about it as a sticky on a whiteboard exercise. And it asks questions like, who are the heroes in the last iteration? What's the cave or the peril that we face? You know, what's going to get in our way? Who is our mentor or our guide? So if this was Star Wars, it'd be Obi-Wan Kenobi. If this was Karate Kid, it'd be Mr. Miyagi. Who's our mentor or guide helping us along the way? And what's the treasure we seek? So it's essentially just a retro theme around a hero's journey, the common journey that any hero in a book or a TV show or a film might go through. Is there a way to download or copy and paste all templates instead of one by one? Not currently, but it's on my to-do list to bulk them all up and make them available in one zip file. What else have we got? Am I right in understanding the 45-minute time limit is for the entire retro with 5 stages or just to fill the board? What I do is I introduce the topic of the retro, often an icebreaker to start, and the 45-minute time limit to 45 minutes to an hour covers everything from introducing each question, 3 to 5 minutes of silent interaction with the board, a bit of discussion, and then creating an action or an experiment out of it. So this is why I say there might be 5 or 6 questions that are on the board, but you might not get to all of them because I'm more focused on some deep discussion on one topic, pulling an action out of it, than just covering all potential topics and then not getting any actions.
Chris, so am I right that you're covering one topic and then creating an action item rather than covering all topics and then creating an action items?
Yeah, so I tend to approach it one topic at a time.
Okay.
So using the previous example, if I was running a retrospective with you guys today, I'd be saying, hey, right, first things first, what I might do is I'll get the team to choose which one they want to start with, because then again, it empowers them to choose. But if they said TripAdvisor, I would say, okay, what would a TripAdvisor review say about our last iteration? I'd set a timer in Miro, Mural, whatever you're using, for 3 to 5 minutes, allow them to silently interact. After that, I would get them to dot vote on the most important one. And then from there, we discuss how we might create an experiment or action out of that before we move on to the next question or topic.
Okay. Do you think that splitting the teams into the smaller group will work fine? Because I just saw that when there's a lot of people, they usually cannot properly work together, and the splitting out of them to the smaller groups works better, at least.
Yeah, so it's a completely fair challenge and a great question. So obviously, a lot of the times we're doing these retrospectives with agile teams, and agile teams, if they are sized in a good way, are kind of in the 5 to 9 range. If we're dealing with retrospectives with larger groups, absolutely use techniques like some of the liberating structure ones, breakout rooms, kind of the 1, 2, 4 all concept and things like that, to allow people to diverge, and then we can come back and kind of converge the ideas together, pull out actions that we can try.
Thank you very much.
What's the most effective icebreaker you've used that worked for a multicultural distributed agile team? I would say for me, it's one of those simple show and tells. So if I was doing a show and tell icebreaker with you guys right now, I would say, guys, grab anything right near you right now and tell a little story about it. And I would grab mine. I'd say, hey, this is my little group doll. He is a permanent reminder to me to be people first, because I've got a little team of Guardians of Agility, and our logo is people first. So he sits on my desk, and then I would nominate the next person to share. So by doing that, often I find, you learn things about people from different cultures. They might have different objects. I've seen stuffed toys. I've seen skulls from other cultures, various things. And it also gets people up and moving about. So I found that to be a great icebreaker when working with multicultural distributed agile teams.
Thank you.
Just scrolling through some of the questions there. What about when we're using the same template and theme and it's working perfectly and the team is improving? Do I still suggest using a different template every time? Like with anything, I will always say, ask the team. If the team is perfectly happy doing the same retrospective each time and they are identifying improvement actions, then don't force this upon them. If it works for them, leave it be. I wouldn't try and force templates. If I observed that perhaps we were saying the same things over and over, and perhaps it wasn't proving as valuable as it could do, I would ask a question and try and get them to see if they would like to explore a different theme. And this is where I might say, well, there's all these different themes. Which one would you guys like to try? And allow them to decide. So how much time do I allow for the action stage of the retro? The action stage for me isn't a separate portion. As I mentioned a moment ago, I tend to approach each topic or question one at a time. And before moving on to the next section, aim to try and pull 1 to 2 actions out of that topic. That way, if at the end of the session, we run out of time and don't get the time to finish all of the questions, at least we've pulled out a few action items that we can try. So again, a big focus for me is on identifying actions, because if we haven't done that, we're just doing a lot of talking, a lot of conversation, but no action. Have I missed any questions? Or is there any other questions that people have that are burning? You want to come up? Do I do a health check at the start of retros? And how do I balance not going into too much detail and keeping it for the theme stuff? So use timers is what I find. I will aspire to kind of have a maximum of 10 minutes on each section and try and move people forwards. In terms of health checks, I don't tend to do a health check at the start of retros always. If the team would like to do so, you can do those very easy, where is your energy levels, or some visual indicators of how the team's feeling, mood, and things like that. You can do those at the start of retros if that is a useful metric for your team. I also have done Spotify style health checks, but I tend to do them on a kind of 3-month basis with the teams I work with rather than doing them at every retro. But again, it depends on the individual needs of that team. I don't tend to start with good or bad stuff. Again, I invite the team to choose which topic they want to choose first, or if they haven't chosen one, I'll just pick one. And I do try and balance out so it's not just a full retrospective of just the negative things. And often any template I try to create, I try to avoid it all being negative things. I try and have a balance of, are we giving kudos and celebrating things? What things went great, what things went badly? Just thinking about different things. I often try and build in a bit of futurespection. So what's our vision for going forwards? Or, if we went forward a few weeks' time, what would we have done to make this next iteration a success? In terms of following through on actions and experiments, one of the biggest things I recommend for teams is to turn those actions and experiments into backlog items that are then prioritized accordingly alongside the rest of your work. If those retrospective actions you identify are then forgotten about for a few weeks, again, it's kind of pointless. So they need to be very transparent, they need to be visible, and they will take time to deliver upon. If you are trying a new experiment, you're trying to do something differently, whether it's a process, whether it's investing in a new technology, whatever that may be, that will take up time and capacity from the teams. So therefore it needs to go on the backlog. The product owner needs to prioritize it accordingly alongside the other things, and they need to be visible and transparent. Otherwise they may well be forgotten about. Advice what are your thoughts on action items from previous retros being carried forward but no visible improvement? If that happens, I would be highlighting it and just asking the team, how do they feel about it? And again, I would probably come back to the previous example, or the previous reference from one of the questions. If we've identified action items, we've acknowledged that these things, that we're not happy with them, and if we've done nothing to change that situation, then odds are we're accepting that we're happy with that reality and we're not doing anything about it. So I'd come back to the Einstein's definition of insanity, the taking no action is a decision. If we're repeatedly seeing the same things over and over in retros because we're not doing anything about them, I would highlight that and ask people how they feel about the fact that it hasn't improved. How do I boost the morale of a team in retros if their review was a failure and they had bad feedback from stakeholders? First things first, I guess acknowledge that it happens. No team is going to be perfect straight away. We do get bad feedback, and if anything, just acknowledge that it's there and use it to inspire you. Ask them, do we want to feel that way again next time? Okay, what could we do differently to try and ensure we don't have that bad feedback? If that was a situation I'd be faced with, I'd be encouraging the team to investigate and think about how can they get closer to those stakeholders so that perhaps there is less likely of a failure or a perceived failure, because those stakeholders would have seen progress more frequently, the feedback loop would have been faster, and they'd be less likely to see something that perhaps they weren't happy with. I'm a big believer in the metric days since last user engagement. It's not a very well-known one, but it's one that for me anchors teams to the users. It anchors in customer centricity. And the way you use that metric is you try and keep that number of days as low as possible. Now, what Agile often does, and particularly when you do iterations and sprints, is it keeps the time frame between you showing the customer something at a maximum between 2 and 4 weeks, depending on the length of your sprints. It could be shorter. If you try and keep that number as low as possible, what's likely to happen is they'll be seeing progress frequently. You'll be able to get their feedback frequently. You'll be able to alter your trajectory if it's going in the wrong direction. They're less likely to see something they're not happy with. And last of all, to boost the team's morale, I would be saying, well, actually, what makes it a failure? What you've learned something there. They weren't happy. So rephrasing or destigmatizing failure and repositioning it as a learning opportunity, and make it more into a positive thing rather than a negative. Any other questions? Have I missed any?
How do you keep your level of energy?
A lot of coffee. How do I keep my level of energy? I don't know, really. I do a lot of things that make time for myself. I'm a big believer in sustainable pace for my own work in progress. So I do a lot of things that keep me energized, mindfulness activities, a lot of walking. I journal on a daily basis. I do what I call solo spectives on a weekly basis, where I sit down and write down things that have gone well and things that haven't quite gone well, and what value did I bring and what am I grateful for. These things I find help me remain energized. And then again, capturing feedback from people, and there is a section as part of this workshop to ask you guys for feedback. The feedback from others energizes and motivates me, even if it's bad, because again, it's a learning opportunity rather than a failure. Tips for driving action towards experiment. It's easy to get lots of people talking, but getting meaningful actions or experiments is my struggle. Any advice? Again, I guess it would come back to what I was saying previously. If people aren't taking action, then odds are they're accepting their current reality. We don't get better things without change, and change is uncomfortable for people. And that's, to be honest, that's behavioral psychology. We've evolved to seek homeostasis, to seek that place where we've got equilibrium and we're comfortable and we're happy, and we seek the path of least resistance. But unfortunately, change, improvements don't happen without change. And to change, you first need to identify where you currently are. And this is where retrospectives help. It gets people's thoughts on where we currently are. And then we can begin to brainstorm and think what we could try next. And again, one of the things I guess I do here is I emphasize that it is an experiment. We're going to try it for a few weeks and learn from it. And we can absolutely talk about it in the next retrospective and see if it happened, if it proved useful or if it didn't. If people start to think of these things as set in stone and permanent, they can become perhaps a little disassociated from it. Can we replace what didn't go well with what do we learn? Absolutely. Rephrase the questions that you ask in any way you think will be useful for your team. As Nick just said. What I say is that these templates, I create them, you guys do with them as you like. You could take them and rip it apart and change it entirely. I don't mind. It's ultimately what works for your team. The templates are purely just a starting point for you to adjust accordingly to what your needs are. You might download my Daft Punk retrospective and say, I hate that song. I'm going to switch in another one that's my favorite and come up with your own. Go for it. Play music as you go along. Tends to work well as well.
You cannot hate the Daft Punk music.
Wow, exactly. Who hates Daft Punk? Should the Scrum Master be neutral, or she should give input into the discussion? So I guess for me, this would depend on the maturity of the team. I guess for me, the position of a Scrum Master is to help the team continuously improve, to live and breathe Agile principles, and but at the same time, it's ultimately what the team needs. So if the team prefers to work in a certain way, support that, but just continuously help them find ways they might do even better. So I wouldn't say necessarily don't give any input, but primarily you're looking for the team, you're looking for their input. And if perhaps they're stalling because they're maybe less mature, maybe they haven't seen what good looks like, that's when I would step in and say, well, I've got this idea, would you like to hear it? And invite them to take on board what you offer. If you're hired as a Scrum Master, what would you advise when finding your own unique style? Go with what you enjoy. As I said, I do this because I enjoy it, because I like being a little bit geeky. I like creating different things. Be yourself. If that means, I sometimes and quite regularly will jump. You can probably see on my shelf up there, I've got various hats and all sorts of things like that. I'll jump on a meeting and have a mask on or something like that and just mess around for a little bit, because that tends to put people at ease. Right, I'm very conscious of time, and I would love to hear feedback from people as to how you feel this session went. So I'm going to invite you to share your thoughts. I've brought everyone's attention to the place where we are on the Miro boards, and there is lots of little stars where you can add your thoughts. The gold stars represent things that could have been more useful to you in the session. The blue ones, what you liked or disliked about the session. And the yellow stars represent, if you had one wish about the session, it would be. If you double click inside any of these stars, you can type your thoughts, or as mentioned, you can share them out loud or type them in the chat. I appreciate all and any feedback, even if you think the session was awful. I've got very thick skin, don't worry.
And while he's doing that, anybody who would like to share their video, I always like to take a group picture to post on our LinkedIn. So if any of you want to join us on video, and in a second here, and we'll do a big group thumbs up or some crazy face, or I've seen some of Chris's crazy crazy face picture, so I know he's good at this.
Mm.
A few more people we need. Let's see who else wants to join us on camera. Here we go. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, John, Toby, Marie. Thanks, everyone. Oh, we got Jan. Hi, Jan. See some familiar faces. Hi, Scott. Katrin.
Oh, the last thing I'll implore you to do is if you create your own retrospective template, share it with everyone else. Let us know.
Yep. All right, everybody. If everybody's ready for the picture, you can do a thumbs up or whatever you want on the count of 3. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Let's queue up. Okay. Thank you.
It was a pleasure to have everyone engage with me tonight, and I would love to see any retrospective templates you create. A little bit of creativity goes a long way, so go for it.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Chris, thank you for joining us so much. We were honored to have you today. Great ideas, and thank you for sharing so freely your talents with the broader global community. I know that many people are using your retrospective templates, and I think it's awesome. So it really is appreciated. And I can't wait to see 52 new ones this year and a new podcast.
Yeah, and someone's asking in the chat, is there a link to the Facebook group? Can you add that in the chat?
There's a Facebook group for Scrum Masters of the Universe. There's a link to live feed, which also gets you to the Facebook group. Yep, and now also, we also have some, I'll paste a few more links. We have some great events coming up and more to come soon. I have some in the works. It'll be a great surprise for all of you. You can join our Slack community or connect with me on LinkedIn and follow that hashtag Scrum Masters of the Universe, and you'll get lots of updates there as well. Maybe we'll even see if we can get Chris back again later in the year for see what he's doing later in the year. Thank you everyone for coming today. I hope you have a great week, rest of your week. Again, thanks, Chris. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
All
Bye.
right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Thanks, guys.